Okay, we're continuing today with our series on the Ramban, the line of Barcelona, in the context of the wider framework of the Vilna Gaon'S timeline for the Geula. So, just for those who have maybe missed, let's do just a very brief recap. As we've said, the Ramban himself, in his Perush al Torah, speaks of the concept of 6,000 years of Jewish history. And I'm going to actually today share with you his own words about that, because the Ramban today, we're putting him in that framework and seeing why he was a critical turning point. But he quotes first of all, the Pasuk in Tehillim. The Pasuk in Tehillim, Tzadik, Kapitel Tzadik, chapter 90, verse 4. Ki elef shanim beinecha ki yom etmol ki avor. 1,000 years in God's eyes is one day. That's a concept that Chazal work on. 1,000 years is a day. So the use of the word yom can also refer to a millennium. Not just a yom echad, but a millennium. Now, the very first pasuk that we speak about in terms of this concept is Bereishis Perak Beis, the second parak of Bereishis, pasuk Gimel, Beis and Gimel. It says, Vayichal Elohim bayom hashvi'i melachto asher asa. Right? Vayishbos b'yom hashvi'i mikom malachto asher asa. Vayivarech es yom hashvi'i vayikadesh oso kivo shavas mikom malachto asher baral him lasos. We say that as part of the Kiddush. So we have the concept here of the seventh day being sacred as opposed to the sixth day. That's where it's introduced the first time. Now the word is a little strange at the end. Rambam says there's one word at the end of that pasuk that is seemingly unnecessary. Asher bara Elohim. Stop. What's the word? Lasos. Lasos. What does lasos mean? What does it mean literally? I know we're not Hebrew experts yet, but everybody knows that lasos is to do. So there's something more to do. It's a strange clue. It's like a bookmark. So the Ramban says as follows: Vida, you should be aware, ki nichlal od b'milas la'asos. In that word la'asos, it is included the concept ki sheishis yemei bereishis heim kol yemos ha'olam. Says the Ramban, this itself teaches us asher bara Elohim la'asos, that the world will also operate on that system of 6 days. Ki kiyumo yesh sheishet alafim shana. The world will only last 6,000 years. Shelakach amru, it says in Bereishis Rabbah, on the spot, Yomo shel Kosh Baruch Hu elef shanim. The day of God is a millennium, is 1,000 years. Now, similarly, the Vilna Gaon, in 500 years later, also made that same comment. It's interesting to note that the Geula ideas of the Ramban for his age really kind of came to a conclusion at the end of his lifetime. In his Sefer HaGeula, he wrote a book about the Geula as well, and he wrote that based on his calculations, the turning point was approximately the year 1290. Well, 1240 indeed was a turning point. And we say that every 60 years or so, which is 10 times the number 6. Get it? Every 60 years is significant. And as we'll see, there's also the concept of hours of the day. So the Ramban was hoping that the Geula would be at 1290. Now, but let's go back to the words of the Ramban for a moment. The Targum Yonasan, again, a very old text, says on the word la'asos, we're speaking about the pasuk Beis, Bereishis chapter 2, verse 2 and 3, Asher bara Elohim la'asos. God is going to do what he did before. Just like God created the world in 7 days, he's going to sustain the creation. There's going to be a continuous asiyah, a continuous daying in creation. And the Targum Yonasan renders that word ve'asid lemevad, and so it shall be done in the future. That means that just like God created the world in 7 days, there's a continuous model of the 6 days of creation and the 7th day of rest will continue onward till the end of time.
What's the word?
Atid leme'avad, which means atid means in the future. Leme'avad means to be done. So it shall be done. Like you remember? So it shall be written, so it shall be done. Do you ever remember 10 Commandments? Cecil B. DeMille, the whole thing? So it shall be written, so it shall be done. That's what it is. Yes. Question?
What did the Ramban say?
The Ramban quotes the Targum Yonasan. Now he breaks down what we said earlier, the concept of 2 days, 2 days, 2 days. He says, Vihine, Bishnei hayamim harishonim, in the first 2 days, Haya ha'olam, kulo mayim velo nishlam bahem davar. The first 2 days of creation, the world was mingled with waters and did not have any sort of complete reality yet. It was information, literally information. The universe was in formation. That's a remez, lishnei alofim rishonim, to the first 2,000 years of human history. Shelo haya behem koreh b'shem Hashem. There was nobody who called out and called to Hashem. Nobody identified Hashem. No one knew who Hashem was. Can you imagine? It's like playing hide and go seek, and no one comes to find you. That's how Hashem felt. In fact, they tell that story, I think, about Rabbi Nachman, that he said that he was a young boy, and he was playing hide and seek, and then someone found him crying bitterly. He says, I went to hide and no one came to look for me. He was bitterly crying. Can you imagine how Hashem felt? 2,000 years. I mean, there were exceptions along the way, but basically for 2,000 years, until Avram Avinu, no one came to look for Hashem or call out to Hashem.
Did you say that was the formation of the Jewish history or history?
World history. World history.
So that's the part that falls into the Geula, the timing that it takes us to choose to see Hashem?
No, I think that we have a clock. The clock ticks. The concept of a world of Bechira is limited shelf life. That's what we're teaching here. This grand experiment called Man in the World of Free Will has a limited shelf life. It cannot extend beyond the 6th day. Into the 7th day, it's already Shabbos, and or Toreach Erev Shabbos, whatever you manage to accomplish as an individual, as a nefesh, as an am, that's the end. There's no more.
So when was Avram Avinu born?
1948. The year 1948. When did he become aware of God? Some say as early as age 3. When did he start really promulgating Hashem? When he was around 40, which would put us right around the year 1988. And when did he become famous? Because he was thrown in the fiery furnace by Nimrod, came out alive, which was the first time in the world that people saw a supernatural miracle. That was the very first one.
So humanity could have continued in this pattern until the deadline, and then it would have been done for them?
Well, there was deadlines before that. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, we mentioned this, says, Asara Doros, there were 10 generations, Ma'adam ad Noach. That was the first deadline. Noach was the one who was supposed to save the world. He ends up just collecting the remnants of the world. Then it says, Asara Doros mi Noach ad Avraham. V'kulan hayu machisinu bayim, and they all angered Hashem because they refused to call out to Hashem. They were calling out to His creations, to the mazalos and the constellations and so on. And therefore, that was a terminus point. And at that point, at the end of the 2nd day, Hashem did shut the door. As we mentioned, He shut the door on the nations of the world for becoming the root of the future mankind that would ultimately experience Shabbos. Okay? So once the first 2-day period closed, when we reach Avram Avinu, no longer can man reach God himself. He has to do it through grafting himself to or adhering to the teachings of the progeny of Avram Avinu. Now, of course, Avram Avinu's children have many, many candidates and characters, which we haven't learned about Be'iyun, but this is a different series about Bereshis. There are many, many false alarms, and those false alarms still have a chelek, still have a part, a role to play in the unfolding Gilui Elokim. And they are, who are Avram's children, that are part of this big play, this big unfolding of history. You have several. Of course, Yitzhak and Yaakov and the 12 Shvatim. That's the main. Now you understand it was like a tree and branches. Tree and branches. 12 branches. Yishmael, because Avram, and remember, no good deed goes unpunished. Because Avram felt badly for Yishmael and he davened for him, what did he say? Lu Yishmael yichya lefanecha. Let it be that Hashem should allow Yishmael to live. What that did was a phenomenal thing. It gave Yishmael a lifeline to Hashem independent of Am Yisrael. It was an exception to the rule. You hear? They are the only nation because Avram, who is the root, demanded that Yishmael be a branch, a semi-branch. Not a full branch, a semi-branch. In the sense that it's not Yishmael, ironically, is never really Avram's rival. Because Avram and Yishmael had a loving relationship. And he was Makar from the end. And he even remarried his mother, Hagar, and had lots of children. Don't forget, Avram never tries and never allows himself to give up on mankind. Ever. Never. He had many children with Hagar after Yishmael was banished. And guess what? It's an amazing thing. But the children of the second marriage, meaning with Hagar, which was the only legitimate marriage. He was never married to Hagar in the days that Sarah was alive. She was a concubine. She was a pilegesh. She was a shifcha. She was never liberated from her status as a non-Jewish slave. In fact, Avram Avinu objected to the idea that he should have relations with a slave, because if you know the halacha, a regular Jew is not permitted to have relations with a non-Jewish woman slave, who's known as a shifcha kananis, right? The only person who can have relations with her is a Jew who becomes a slave. A Jew sold into slavery. Why would a Jew be sold into slavery? Because he was a thief that didn't have what to repay his debts. And he was a debtor. He's a debtor, so they throw him in debtor's prison. Compare debtor's prison, the Jewish debtor's prison, to the debtor's prisons they used to have in England for the American deadbeats. They used to, the first people came to America were the lowlife and the deadbeats. Best way to get away from owing a lot of money is run to America.
Same thing now.
Yeah, right. Nothing's changed. So the Jewish concept of a debtor's prison is not a prison at all. It's a warm, loving family in which they honor him and treat him better than they treat themselves. Can you imagine? What's that? Real rehabilitation. Instead of throwing him in with a bunch of criminals to plan and grow and develop and hone his skills of being a criminal, which is what our prisons are today.
I'm really sorry to digress here, but...
There is a digression here. You're very good at digressing me.
I know.
This year is going to take about 10 years to finish at this rate. No, go. You can ask one question. Okay, fine. All right. Anyway, so let's go back to the Ramban. The Ramban says, Asher bara Elohim la'asos, just like Hashem created the world in 6 days, he will continuously create world history until it ends in the 6th millennium. Continues the Ramban. V'kach amru in the Gemara Avodah Zarah, Daf Tes. Shnei alfi tohu, 2,000 years of spiritual chaos and nothingness. Yom hashlishi niris, when the third day appears, there'll be tzmicha and asasa peiros. Remember, in the third day of creation, there was fruits. All of a sudden, the tree appears, otherwise known as the Eitan Hagadol. You know what Eitan literally means? An oak tree. Who is called the oak tree? Avram Avinu, because he's the tree of mankind. By the way, we just passed Tu B'Shvat. I'm going to recap my Tu B'Shvat shir afterwards. Anybody wants to listen in. But the idea, the Pasuk in Dvarim says, Ki ha'adam eitz hasoda, and the din about Tashchis, a human is compared to a tree. You can't cut down a fruit tree just like you can't cut down a human being's life, even in emergencies. A very, very big issue. That's what the source of Baal Tasha is. Why? Because the concept of a tree is very, very central to the spreading of the idea of Hashem because it's a model. What are the two trees we speak about? Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra, Eitz HaChaim. Avram is compared to an Ason. We speak about Sharoshim. So there's a lot of comparisons between a tree and a person. It's got a similar, we have a similar spiritual root because that's the model of how things work. And just to point out the understanding of the Tohu, someone mentioned about Bechira, right? You mentioned about Bechira. So what is the Bechira? What was the Bechira up until Avram Avinu? Either you believed in what you thought, or you believe in what Hashem taught. That's Bechira. Bechira is a binary choice. Lahavdil, somebody saw The Matrix, which is a wonderful Kira film. If you ever saw it, you get to take a blue pill or a red pill. What's it? I forget which one is which. Which one is the reality pill? The real reality? One of them. Probably the blue one. I'm not sure. That's the symbol of Bechira. You can choose one choice, blue or red. What's the choice? It's like Republican and Democrat, if you think about it. Okay. Do you believe in the reality that Hashem created, or are you creating your own reality? It's only one choice. Do you believe what the Torah says about reality? That if you follow the mitzvahs of the Torah, it will be good for you and it will be good for mankind? Or do you want to create your own rules based on your understanding? Now here I'm going to make somewhat of a, what?
There was no Torah, so when you think even
Okay, so you think there was no Torah.
It was never given.
There was, however, what you would call a Torah, an oral tradition, like a quasi Torah Shabbal Peh that preceded the Torah.
when it was first 2,000 years.
Yes, it was given to Adam Harishon. It was passed on through the generations to Noach and Shem and Aver. And when we read all the midrashim about how Yaacov Avinu spent time, 14 years studying in the yeshiva of Shem, but what was he studying there? Was he studying Bava Metzia? They didn't have Bava Metzia yet because they didn't have the laws of the written Torah yet. How can you study the laws of returning lost objects if you don't have the pasuk of lost objects? How can you learn the laws of we're learning now in Bava Basra and the Daf Yomi about removing nezek, about preempting damage to your neighbor. But there was no din. There was no halacha that was revealed. That doesn't mean it didn't exist. But basic principles about Hashem and belief and free will and goodness were available.
What do you mean it was available? It sounds so...
It was an oral tradition. It was an oral tradition. Now, it's very important that oral tradition... Oh, you're forcing my hand with your questions. Okay. There is a... I'm going to give you...
Is that the same how we say Lot knew was Pesach, he gave matzahs, how can you know there's no pasuk?
Correct. There was a spiritual intuition by Avram of the actual mitzvos. But prior to Avram Avinu, there was information. We say that way back in the year 587, that's a long time before Avram comes on the scene, there was a person named Chanoch. Remember that Chanoch? And he goes up to Shemayim. Hashem took him. Guess what? He was the first one, post Adam really, and Noach, who makes it to the big time. He's brought up to Shemayim and he becomes the CEO of Hashem's. Hashem puts him in charge of the lower world. And more importantly, he gives him a status. He becomes Hashem's chief of staff. Lahavdil Priebus. He's Priebus to Trump, okay? The chief of staff. He's running the show, organized. And he becomes actually the person who is put in charge of saving the world. So he's a prototype of Mashiach. Get it? Anybody who's a Mashiach is somebody who is selected to do an important job on behalf of Hashem, to reveal God's will and to implement it. And that brings us to the concept of Mashiach ben Yosef. Mashiach ben Yosef and Metatron, otherwise known as Chanoch, who's the earliest figure that we have in some sort of Kabbalah of Torah, of Shlichus, of chosenness, are identical, according to our teachers, meaning there is a force in the world that's running the world, just like Yosef ran Mitzrayim, and it's moving the world in Hashem's direction, because remember, Hashem gave the world only 6 days. And that's not a lot of time in Hashem's mind. If 1,000 years is a day, you don't have a lot of time. So some force has to make sure that the world is moving forward and forward towards the Geula. The first one was Chanoch, and he actually found the sefer known as Raziel HaMalach. Do you ever see that little sefer, Raziel HaMalach? With the funny... Raziel HaMalach, right? You have one of those little ones? You have one of those?
My father used to give it to me whenever I go.
Correct. Right.
No, it isn't.
It was the original book of Kabbalah.
They say you should
supposed to-
keep,
it's
it prevent, you should always have it in the house. It
You're not allowed
prevents
to do it.
fire.
Yeah, there are certain things that everybody likes to keep. Certain books that are good to have around. Raziel HaMalach is one of them. Noam Elimelech is another one of them, from the Heilige Rebbe of Melech of Lizensk, who was also a very, very key person. And his book, among the Hasidim, was known to be a skula for easy childbirth. So if you have any kids having babies, or if you yourself are planning more, put one under your pillow.
I think that's what they say.
No, that's a different idea. But in terms of books, and some people, of course, today use Rav Nachman's Svarim. That's a more recent edition, right? Okay, so the book of Sefer Raziel HaMalach appears on the scene within the first day of creation. It is associated, it was given to Adam HaRishon, it was discovered by Chanoch, and it already introduces, and by the way, Adam supposedly hid it because there was nobody worthy of giving it to. Because this is in the first 10 generations.
His own child shakes.
Let me just finish this point. And then, wait a minute. So, he hides it, but it already contains the information about how God created the world with the 10 spheros and the concept of tzimtzum, that Hashem created a vacated space known as the Chalal HaPanei. This is the basic principle of Kabbalah. How do you answer the question that the infinite God created a finite world? It doesn't make any sense. So the fact that God created a vacated space known as the Chalal HaPanei, and lahavdil, psychologically, that's a very important principle. If you want somebody to step up and grow, you got to give them space to grow. Good thing for overprotective parents, and over managing bosses and so on.
Hashem gave him
Take a step back and let them develop.
Hashem gave him this book.
Hashem, Raziel the Malach, revealed the book himself to Adam HaRishon. Adam HaRishon buries the book, but it contained the basic core principles of Kabbalah, including the concept of spheres and tzimtzum. That book was received by Noach in the year 1556, approximately, and which was the year that Noach turned 500. How many years before the flood? 100 years before the flood. Hashem again tries to spark things along, move things along, a little boost of energy. Nobody got it.
Getting the Raziel HaMalach.
Noach getting the book of Raziel HaMalach gave him a chance. The last 100 years that he was already building the Teva, says, here's the book, here's the Teva, you got visual aids and you got the syllabus. Teach! Save the world. Nah, didn't work out. So now comes Shem ve'Aver, of course, received Raziel HaMalach from their father Noach. And they continue that tradition after the flood. And that brings us to the most important revelation, which starts with the emergence of Avram Avinu, and that's called Sefer HaYetzirah, the Book of Creation. Now, the Book of Creation was what Avram discovered. Who did he get it from? Okay, so our tradition is that Sefer was actually given by Razi al-Malach to Shem and Aver, and Shem and Aver then deliver it to Avraham. So they passed the baton to Avraham and say, we couldn't do anything with this, maybe you can. We can't play this game very well, but maybe you can.
What day are we in now? I'm still confused with the
We're at the beginning. We are at the end of the second day. That's the end of the period of Tohu Vavohu.
How does it change from Malach Raziel to Sefer Yetzirah?
Sefer Yetzirah was a book that was not known except by those select few, and the person who brought it public was Avram Avinu. Now the Ramban writes a very important perush on Sefer HaYetzirah. Ramban, because Ramban has an important role.
He's another force.
He is again one of those great tzaddikim that's in the model of Mashiach ben Yosef. Mashiach ben Yosef. Yosef is the prototype of preparing the world in the 6 days, and then comes Mashiach ben David, who helps us prepare for Shabbos itself. At the very end of the 6th day, well, I mean, it could have been sooner, but at the end of the 6th day, where we are, then it's the job of Mashiach ben David to complete the process that Mashiach ben Yosef started. Now, at this point, I want to introduce or reintroduce something very, very important, because now we're going to get back to the Ramban. Mashiach ben Yosef, which started way back in the year 500 with Chanoch, right? He was the original. He becomes the spiritual root of Mashiach ben Yosef. Chanoch. And he is guiding this process from on high. Again, he is the chief of staff of the Ribono Shel Olam running this world. All the malachim, all the kochot. He's in charge of everything. Mashiach ben Yosef has 5 primary jobs. You ready? This is very, very, very important. Number 1, he fights the enemies of Klal Yisrael. Why? Because Klal Yisrael must do its job. Klal Yisrael must bring Hashem's knowledge to the world. And if there are enemies that are foiling Klal Yisrael, then how can we allow that? So that's job number 1. Job number 2 is to release Israel from captivity. Remember how Yosef HaTzadik, said, Pakod Yifkod, you're going to get out of here. I promise you're going to get out of here, and you will take with me my bones. And they took the bones of all the Shvatim, actually, right? As we learned, all the Shvatim went out. That's the second role of Mashiach ben Yosef, to end, to whatever extent, not only the Golus, but the fact that prior to the Golus, removing the dominion of the nations over us. Remember, what's keeping us down? Their control. Once that control is removed, the next stage that he has to do is called Kibbutz Golios. He has to bring Jews from wherever they might be to Eretz Yisrael. That's job number 3. Job number 4 is to teach Razei Torah, to reveal the hidden secrets of the Torah. Remember, what was it? Excuse me?
Does that have to be in this order?
No. Everything exists contemporaneously. The process is going on at all times and at all levels, and there's always an interaction, and there's always a Mashiach ben David process happening simultaneously with the Mashiach ben Yosef process. All the time. Because it's just moving us along, move along. It's an evolution. I don't like to use that word, but I like the word process better. And the fourth role of Mashiach ben Yosef is to reveal the secrets of the Torah. Why? Okay, so now understand this. We relate to each other on many different levels. Like right now we're in a class, right? So you behave one way in a class, whether you're the teacher, whether you're the student, right? And there's a certain interaction. And then there's another type of interaction like a relative. That might be a closer, but maybe not so close. A cousin, an uncle, I don't know, a niece and a nephew. Different type of relationship. It's a little closer, but at the same time it may be less, you have the relationship of a very close friend. You have the relationship of a husband and wife. And you have parents and children. Which would you say is who would you say generally knows a person best? More honest question, who knows their secrets? Who knows their secrets? And everybody has secrets, right?
Themselves.
Sometimes they're so secret they don't know it themselves. Maybe that's better like that. A spouse. And that is the most intimate relationship, at least it should be. To a spouse, you tell everything. That's the secrets of the Torah. Just like you have secrets that you don't reveal to lesser relationships, but you reveal them to the most intimate of relationships. It's a sign of love, it's a sign of trust, it's a sign of approval. When the Mashiach ben Yosef, his job is to remind the Jewish people of their intimate relationship with Hashem, which began with a wedding at Har Sinai, where Hashem marries the Jewish people by virtue of giving them the Aseres HaDibros. I was in the city of Ramallah yesterday. Very interesting city. And they have a lot of old churches and a lot of old mosques. And then in the middle of the square, they have a Moshe Rabbeinu with 2 luchos. I said, boy, that's good. One for us. I saw so many churches and so many mosques, and then modern buildings which, didn't have any particular religious significance. They have there a park with monuments to all of the great Zionist leaders. Yeah, it's true. Not one with the yarmulke. Some have hats on, actually. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they weren't. That's their monuments. But I said, you know what? When I saw that, my heart dropped a little bit, But then when I went further into town, I found this little thing of Moshe. I said, Mi Kamcha Yisrael Goy Echad Ba'aretz. Right. So why is Kabbalah, Sisrei Torah, essential? It's essential because it revives the love relationship between Hashem and Am Yisrael, reminds us. And you can't get to that intimate point unless you have a very deep relationship. The deep relationship begins with what? Torah and mitzvos. Basic Torah and mitzvos. Know the Chumash, know the Tanakh. This is what Hashem gave us. The Nevi'im, what they gave us. And then what the Gemara gave us, and the Mishnah and Gemara gave us, and the Halachos, and live that way. And every mitzvah is a connection. Every mitzvah is another step in that relationship. What does mitzvah mean? It means tzavsa. It's a binder. It binds you to Hashem. That's what it is. Now, think about somebody who wants to jump to the level of secrets right away. What do you think about that person? They're going to get a slap across the face. Who are you? How dare you? Right? You want to enter my inner chamber? You want to enter my Kodesh Kadashim? You have to earn that. You have to build a solid foundation. But sometimes you need to drop a hint that there's more to the relationship than just a friendship. And there's a promise of things to come. So the words of Mashiach ben Yosef are that to revive the love affair between Hashem and the Jewish people. And this happens many, many, many times, and every time there's like a new release of Sisrei